she was an extraordinary woman, I think. I mean, when they went to Kansas, think about this. Sorry, this is my family story. So
Yeah.
John Jr. and Jason, they have families, right? By the time they're going to Kansas, they aren't kids. They aren't John Brown's children. They're grown adults, right? With
Yeah.
children of their own. So they get on a boat to go to Kansas to live near their uncle, right? And they've got their children along. They've got butter churns and, things like that. And they get on a boat, and on the way, they've got Junior and Wealthy have their son Johnny, who's about 2. Jason and Ellen have Austin, who's 4, and Charlie, who's 2. And Austin gets dysentery and he dies on the
Nice.
boat, right?
Yeah.
And they have to pull over, and that the boat is like pulled stopped. It's a steamer, right? And they're stopped, just a regular stop. And this is a Missouri Southern steamer, so they're like in the South, in the slaveholding territory, and they're not fooling anybody that they're anything but free soilers going to Kansas, right? And they feel threatened, and their son just dies. And the captain of the steamship says, okay, you have however many hours, to bury your son. And it's pouring rain, and they get off the steamship and on a bluff overlooking the Missouri in the pouring rain, they dig a grave for their 4-year-old son. And nobody, there's letters and accounts of this. Nobody mentions where were Wealthy and Ellen during this? Where were the babies, right? What is going on? But they all get
Yeah.
back on the ship and they get to, Independence, Missouri, and they make their way across the little part of Missouri and they get to Kansas and they set up camp, and then they all promptly get malaria, right?
It's just, yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's just a nightmare. And Ellen and Jason are so deep in their grief. Like they start out, and this is an adventure. This is going to be an adventure, and they're going to go settle, and they're going to, walk the walk on their abolitionism. And this horrible, horrible tragedy strikes.
Yeah.
And I think it really broke Ellen, And
Yeah.
then, then there was Blackjack and the sacking of Lawrence, and it just goes
Yeah.
on, and Potawatomi, and then Osawatomie, and somewhere in all that, Ellen manages to get back to Sherbondi Hill with her baby, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
she basically never leaves again. But she was faithful. I mean, Jason and Ellen went on to have 3 more children, all of whom, 2 more children, all of whom died. None of them made it to adulthood except for Charlie. And she worked, their house got burned down in Akron by pro-slavery people. So this is one of the reasons Jason was always poor. Like his house got burned down. And Ellen worked, she made $2 an hour and she's trying to pay off debt. And she finally, they built another house. And then she convinced Jason that they had to sell their house to pay off their debts. Um, I think she gets a bad rap.
Yeah.
I don't know why. That's an interesting question, but I think it's
Yes.
because historians like to speculate. I don't think there's anything there. I've seen
Yeah.
letters, from the 1880s, 1890s, where Wealthy or Ruth are writing to Ellen or about Ellen and saying, very kind things. So,
Yes. Yeah. In fact, that letter that I opened with, there was also a last line that John Brown wrote about his daughter-in-law. He said, his wife, Ellen, is a very neat, industrious, prudent woman who has undergone a severe trial, quote, in the school of affliction, end quote, which you're talking about, the loss of her child and that horrible experience of facing that kind of hostility. And I do recall reading some of the early letters from Kansas. Um, and I think for a while, they were thinking about we need to go, let's go home. And then eventually they got through it, and then they were digging in. And then of course that's when things went haywire with all the pro-slavery terrorism.